There you go.
So I would like to invite Dr. Rogna Goldin, the manager of, the director of the Libraries and Information System in Bar-Ilan, to say a few opening words. Please, Olga.
Shalom lekulam, good morning. I will not make this returning for my yesterday's opening words. I just want to welcome all of you for joining us to the first Open Access Week in Israel. And it's very important for all our academic and librarian society to promote this very important issue of open access. And I'm so glad that we once again have Mrs. Inge Van Nieuwerburgh, who was our very special guest last year. And I hope you all will enjoy Inge's lecture and presentation. And we will be very happy to hear about your experience. And we thank you so much for sharing with us your experience and knowledge. So I just want to wish to all of you to enjoy our today's session. And Inge, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks
maybe just Sarit, you can introduce Inge.
Yes, if possible, thank you. So just to introduce you, Inge, and your very impressive resume. So Inge is the coordinator of scientific communication in Ghent University Library, very active in the field of open access. She has given several workshops and lectures on the subject. She is widely known to be an enthusiastic speaker and holds OA roadshows at Ghent University in order to promote more self-archiving in the IR, while also lobbying for OA mandates. She's the member of different working group and Flemish Library Association, where she gives a presentation on scientific communications. And the last thing that I already congratulate you, but it's a good opportunity to say it again. She's now the chair of the Open Air organization. So please, Inge.
Okay, thanks a lot for the nice words. You hear me and you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I'm going to talk a bit about embracing open science, some general concepts and some insights on open science and on policies in Ghent University and in Belgium. Now, I have a library background, and why do you think that we as a library can add value to this conversation? Well, I have some things to say about that, because in Ghent University, for example, our library's credo is facilitating open knowledge creation. So we want to support our researchers in the creation of knowledge based on open sources, and to have all knowledge available as possible, as much as possible, to do your research. So we as a library have a lot of experience in opening up information and help researchers create knowledge. So that's why we as a library already very, very early on in the early 2000s started to embrace open access to publications to start with, and then it evolved into open science, of course. Now, what are these drivers for open science? What do we think is important there? Well, when you think about open science, it's about sharing knowledge, about sharing information. And you want to do that as transparently as possible. So your process of doing research, how do you collect your information, your data, your software, your process? You want to be transparent about that. that, and you want to make the results available and free so everyone else can read them and verify them. You want to make them reusable as well, so that others can build upon your work. The whole research environment is about reuse, is about building on other one's experiences and adding your own experiences and your new insights into the process. So, and all this should be accessible not only to our own community, but to the outside world as well. There are many things surrounding research that support this mission. For example, when you think about research integrity, for example, the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity from ALEA gives some attention to open access, for example, and data management. It says that researchers and research institutions and organizations should create data and research materials, secure preservation, make the data as open as possible, as closed as necessary, because we all know that some data cannot be opened like that because of privacy reasons, for example. And these data should be in line with FAIR principles, and data should be a citable product of research, for example. I will go into some of these details later on in this talk, but this is what we already see in the context of research integrity, which is much more than just dissemination of information. And then there are a lot of benefits for you in open science, because lots of information, lots of research is available to you, and yours is much more out there. It's disseminated, which means that you can have more citations to do work. This can be important for your career recognition. You find new collaborations because people find what you have been doing, but that's within the community. As said, on the other side, you have opportunities for citizen science, economic benefits for the private sector, for example. So lots of things outside of research that benefit from open science as well. And we all see this in the responsible research and innovation contexts, because open access is one of these pillars of responsible research and information. It also supports public engagement, for example. We have seen it a lot during the pandemic period. It's not always easy to engage public and to keep trust in science, but especially if science is closed, it's much more difficult to get people's trust in science. And for science education, it's important to have all kinds of researchers out there so that people can access them. And a last thing that I want to stress is open science is also about leveling the divide between the haves and the have-not. We have to be careful for that, because we sometimes see some tendencies in the whole open science movement, certainly in a commercial environment, where this creating this level field, that it's distorted. So we have to be careful about that as well. So that's all the context of open science, and open science is about many themes, including open access to publications, of course, but also open data, responsible research data management, fair data, open notebooks, open peer review, citizen science, open educational resources. So a lot of things going on in the open world surrounding science. In the end, what you don't want is secret science. You want it to be transparent and open. Now, let me start by saying a few things about open access to publications. As I understood, some of you are more familiar with that than others, so I want to stress some basics. We all see why researchers publish. It's to communicate the results of your research towards peers, towards society. You want to raise your profile. You want people to know about your research, expose the arguments. And it's an important element still in your future career. Publications and also for gaining funding, publications are an important factor. So it's quite important to choose the right platform. Is it with a national or an international focus that you want to publish? Is it more an academic public that you want to adhere to, or a more professional like SMEs and industry that you want to adhere to? What is your commitment to accessibility? All these things makes our criteria in finding the right platform to choose to disseminate. And for years and years and years, as I could say, even say centuries, scholarly publishing was the way to disseminate your ideas. And actually the classical way of publishing is one platform for several functions. You want to create awareness, you want to certify your research, think about impact factors and all the things around that. You want your ideas to be registered as being your ideas, your research. You want it to be archived for the future, but there's also a rewarding step there where we see that, for example, articles in journals with a high impact factor are rewarded more than others, which is more and more being disputed, but that was the classical way of scholarly communication. There are some concerns around this publishing model that certainly in a library context people know, but also outside it's important to know that there's quite a monopoly of some commercial publishers with a lock-in, with a lot of subscriptions that we pay a lot for. But it's not only that. There's more and more critique on peer review, the opaque peer review and long publishing timelines. But sometimes there's also quite a bias when journal editors and reviewers act as gatekeepers, which is in say not a bad thing, but we see it leads to bias towards, for example, young researchers that have more difficulties in publishing their research, some prejudice against certain minority groups in certain countries. All these kind of things exist. We have the subscription system as we had it causes high costs, as I said, also lock-in. We pay for a journal title, not especially for a quality of a single article. There's a lot of gaming of impact factors going on lately, the last few years. We hear a lot of misconduct on that level. And we still see that at this moment, this classical publishing model prevails, and also the classical business model prevails. But we see change coming. It has been coming for years. That's why open access started, because of the functions that I have shown before. These functions can be torn apart, and you can have several other ways to achieve dissemination and value creation. So open access came into the picture, first of all, to make sure that authors could have more control over their own publication, and that information could flow out into the public without any barriers. And just always keep in mind, when we talk about open, we means that anyone can freely access, use, modify, and share. Sometimes you can have some criteria, which is requirements to preserve provenance and openness. So this is what opendefinition.org lists as a definition that we all use when we talk about open, like in open access to publications in open data. How do we do that? How do we achieve open access? Well, we can have different ways. The green road is self-archiving, which has been mentioned before. So you put your publication in an open repository, or you publish directly in an open access journal, which is known as the gold road to open access. I want to specifically address diamond open access as well, where it's actually a sub-category of a gold road, because there no APCs are charged to the researchers as well. hybrid way of open access is when you pay to put an article in open access, one article in a subscription journal. So for all the other articles are closed, which is not a good way to do open access. And then more and more you see different open access venue platforms, which are not really a journal, but platforms to open up your publication. A quick word about green open access. This is putting a version of your publication in an open repository, an open archive. This could be a repository connected to your institution. This could be connected to your discipline. Very important to know is that an open repository is open, is interoperable. So in the backend, easily exchanges information and guided with open standards and protocols. And that is the big difference with, we call it social networks like ResearchGate or academia.edu or Mendeley. These are not open repositories. It's a question we get a lot. Why is ResearchGate not enough for open access? Well, ResearchGate is a closed community. You have to register to enter the platform, and it's a commercial entity, not an open repository with open APIs and open standards and things like that. So that is important to know. I wanted to stress that an open repository is typically held controlled by an institution or by a community. And you can deposit several versions, you can add links, you can do a lot in these repositories. What you can do, what you can upload in open access, you can check policy publishers, the policy of publishers in Sherpa Romeo, where there's a lot of information about which version you can open through an open repository. In Sherpa Romeo, you will be able to see whether you can open up the preprint, the final peer-reviewed manuscript, which is called the AAM, Accepted Author Manuscript, or the published version, which is the version of record. You fill in some metadata. So there's you can put it out all in the open repository, and you can do that for all kinds of scholarly publications. And I already explained that there are several kinds of repositories. This is a picture of the Ghent University academic bibliography / open repository, where you can find a lot of open text, open publications of our researchers. There's of course also open access books. I just want to, I'm not going into detail here, but a lot of books are also open access. It's not so easy to achieve as with articles, but you can find in OAPEN, the repository of open books, which books are open access. And there is a directory of open access books as well, a search engine pointing to open books. And then there are the open access journals. So we all know that there are more and more true open access journals, which means that the whole journal is open access. You don't have to pay a subscription fee. Everyone in or outside academia can read the article without any obstacle. But there are different business models behind these open access journals. Some charge APCs, some work with the membership of researchers, of libraries, some crowdfunding or support by a scholarly society or by a funder. So different kind of business models. And some of these business models can in the end trigger, that was the word I was looking for, can trigger abuse, which we will see. Namely the so-called predatory journals and publishers. Because we see that there is a business model out there where more and more open access journals and big publishers, commercial publishers, gain a lot of money by charging APCs, article processing charges, to the authors that want to publish their research. And we see that there are people out there who want to profit. You always have them, of course, but they are really extreme examples, and that's what we call predatory journals, and they prioritize the self-interest, of course, at the expense of the scholarship. And there is misleading information, deviation from best practices on editorial and publication practices, lack of transparency. Well, actually, a lot of things that go against open access in practice. And a lot of attention is going to these predatory journals because it's not always easy to detect what is a predatory journal and what is not. And just lately, like last week, the Inter-Academy Partnership, IAP, Science Health Policy, released a report on predatory publishing and showed that there is a spectrum of predatory publishing practices. There are only a few journals and publishers that are really high-risk, fraudulent, predatory journals. But in most cases, it's actually, there are degrees, there is a spectrum of predatory publishing practices. And some of them are just not about misleading the researcher, but a lack of resources to do things the right way. So like more on the right side, you see that you can have more low quality journals, but not fraudulent, where they have strong editorial boards, but it's not always easy to follow up on in the right way. Not everything is out there on the website, the publishing process and things like that. So it's a real spectrum, and it's not easy to say you have to ban and you have to skip this or that journal. And it's also not easy to make lists, like we have seen the Beale's list of predatory journals. There was a lot of critique, which was sometimes right, sometimes not that right, but it's not, it's a spectrum, and journals evolve. Some of these journals that were labeled as predatory journals were actually just not prepared to do the whole publishing process in the right way, and were not right on that list. So lists are not the solution to this. I'm afraid that just for everyone, publishing has become more complex, but you need a bit of time to invest a bit of time to select the right platform where to publish. Now, these predatory practices are symptomatic of three drivers, and we know them. It's the monetization of and commercialization of academic research output. There's a lot of money to gain, so that can induce these problems. There's research assessment and evaluation that is quite highly based on publication. Challenges and deficiencies in the peer review system. So these three drivers trigger abuse. So it's something to be aware of. In this, when you get the PowerPoint, there is a link to this report for people who are interested. It's not always easy to detect them, but this is a bit of a guide that can help you. So this leads you to the question, how do I choose the right journal? And there are some general rules which I point out to here. There are lots. This is not only about open access journals, this is about journals in general, because even with Elsevier, you have a spectrum of journals of very high quality to very low quality in the collection that they sell. And also with MDPI, an open access publisher, which comes into focus now and then when we talk about predatory publishing, you see high quality journals where the research community is very, very satisfied with the journal. And you have low quality journals and some practices that are not good in academic publishing that these journals use. So even within publishers, it's not easy to identify. So here I give you a few handles to to assess the quality of a journal and to see which one you can choose for publication. Think, check, submit is one of these checks, and these are the checks that they add for seeing whether there are a lot of predatory practices in a certain journal or not. And I deleted one. That wasn't my, yeah. My intention is that there was a second slide here that I will reintroduce, which is based on this report with additional checks that you can use to assess a journal, whether it has some predatory publishing practices or not. So I will add it when I send the PowerPoint. There are some solutions to tackle this, not always easy to introduce, but there are some solutions. First of all, there is a directory of open access journals, which is a positive list of peer-reviewed open access journals in many languages from all over the world. So all the journals in this directory are peer-reviewed. They are checked before they are registered in the directory of open access journals. So this is the basic threshold. Are they peer-reviewed or not? Are they open access or not? And then you have a subset that adhere to the 16 principles of transparency and best practice in scholarly publishing. You see all these different criteria here on the slide. It's on publication ethics, authors' fees, copyright and licensing. Is it clear enough, etc., etc. So that is what you see in the directory of open access journals. And there are more than 70,000 journals, open access journals, peer-reviewed open access journals are registered in the DOAJ from over in 80 languages. So it's a good resource on that level. But what we think is very important in tackling these problems is Diamond OA, so Diamond Open Access. And Diamond Open Access platforms, it's a scholarly publication model where you don't charge readers, but you don't charge authors either. To publish your journal. It's community-driven, academia-led, it's co-owned by research communities and institutions. So it's in many cases serving a smaller community, not like overall multidisciplinary stuff. So it's an important factor in the bibliodiversity of publishing, so in the diversity of models and initiatives that you have. And there is now, just recently, also last week or 2 weeks ago, an action plan was released for Diamond to support a Diamond Open Access initiated by Science Europe, which is the association of funders in Europe, Coalition S, which is a coalition of funders to support open access, Operas, which is an infrastructure for social sciences and humanities, and the French National Research Fund Agency. They presented this action plan, but by now, among others, Open Air have endorsed this plan, and the plan is to support these Diamond Open Access initiatives to become more sustainable, because many of them are funded through a project or through a few departments in the university that put forces together to do this, but you need some more sustainability actions to support them. So there's an action plan there, and this is certainly something that we want to support from Open Air, but also in Ghent University, we are very interested in this model. For example, we have an open access journals system supported within Ghent University, which is openjournals.ghent.be, which we want to invest in. And the European Commission has invested in Open Research Europe, which is a platform for publications coming out of Horizon Europe and Horizon, all European Commission funded projects. All these publications can come into this in this platform, and there you deposit your publication, and the preprint is already opened up to the world, and then peer review starts, and based on the peer review you can get the status of this publication, which is approved with reservation or not approved, and then you can initiate the process. So that is a platform that the European Commission started. It is based on the same platform that Wellcome Trust uses for its publications. This is not obliged. You're not obliged as when you have a project running from the European Commission, funded by the European Commission, to add your publication to the platform, but it is advised to do so. And as you can see, there is open peer review in this platform. So peer review starts after the preprint has been published, and it's an open peer review system, which is also a solution to one of the solutions to solving the problem of publishing, the open peer review. And this is actually a picture that shows how Open Research Europe conducts open peer review. Research can be cited immediately. You have an open and transparent conversation around the publication. So it's more about the conversation and not only putting out your research results. Authors are empowered to lead the process, so it's their community. Reduce the possibility of bias, improve the quality of peer review is also an important one. So feedback is provided openly and constructively. So this is the basis of open peer review. You can have several sorts of open peer review. It can be that it's very, very open, which means that every researcher who registers, because we don't want just slashing, and we don't want people just to throw insults at other people's heads or something. You have to register, but as every researcher can then join the conversation, as to say, and give feedback. But it can open peer review, not in that platform, but we see it in other platforms, that the name is not exposed of the peer reviewer, but the text of the peer review is, because sometimes, like young researchers, are a bit afraid to open up their critique, because it could hinder evaluation of their own research. So there are different ways for open peer review. Now, okay, that's all about publications, but behind that is quite a research process. So what about the data? Open science is also about the data. And we want to know what's behind there, what's behind these publications. Data management has become more and more important, increasingly important in the research process. You want to manage your data in a correct way. So who is responsible for the data? Where is the data stored? Is it open or not? Who can have access? If the PhD student or the professor moves to another institution, who is responsible then for the data? Who can be contacted for that? Are there any data in there that is protected for privacy reasons or contractual reasons or copyright reasons, etc.? So what is it with the data that you use? How did you collect it? How did you manage it? It's all important to know from an ethical point of view and from a research integrity point of view and a verification point of view. So there are different reasons to do that. And the aim to manage this data in a good way is to make your data fair. And fair means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So findable is that you have to be able to find them automatically, even if the data is not open as in open to the world because of privacy reasons, for example. You still should be able, if you have access, for example, you work in my team, it should be easy to find the data, that they don't disappear into oblivion. There should be accessible, so there can be limitations on the use of data, but it should be made explicit to the outside world, for example, with an open database license or things like that. So when you see the data, you know what you can do with it and what you can't do with it. The third pillar is interoperability. So you use standardized terms, standardized forms, reference to metadata. This is interoperability, so that it's in the standardized way opened up. And reusable is that humans or machines should be able to reuse the data, even if the data are closed. If you have a collaboration with another research group, this research group should be able to reuse these data as well. So sufficiently described to be able to understand them, and you have a clear and accessible data uses license. So this is making your data fair. This is not always an easy process. We have to admit that, but if researchers take this into consideration as of the start of their research, it's much easier to adhere to these principles than doing it at the end of your research process, because then it can be very difficult to change your data to fair. And I have said it before, we talk about fair and open data. Fair data is for all research data out there, and some of these data will be open, some will be restricted, some will be closed. It's a spectrum, degrees of data sharing, but you share data, whether it's only with a few people or with the whole world, you share your data with someone, so it should be managed in the right way. Key is a data management plan. We see that many funders mandate data management plans now partially force research to think about data and to manage the data in the correct way. We all know about a lot of examples of people losing their data on their hard drive, on their computer, because then it's lost. Or you can't find it anymore. Or there was research 5 years ago and my PhD students worked on that. Where did it go? I don't remember what contractual constraints were attached to this data. What can I do? Can I give it to my colleague or not? That's where a key data management plan comes in handy. You have, for the data, you have a nice overview of what you can do with the data. There are quite some tools out there to make such a data management plan so that you don't forget what you have to think about. It's easier when you have like a template to fill out. In Belgium, we use DMP Online.be, which is a consortium of many research organizations in Belgium. It's a local instance of an open source software developed by the Digital Curation Center called DMP Online, and that you can use yourself as well. So we use it already for years, and we have good experiences with that. And this comes out of the policy that we have at Ghent University to support, to supply some tools. And we developed a policy around open science at Ghent University already a long time ago. Now know that the credo of Ghent University is dare to think. So critical and independent brains study, do research and work at Ghent University. That is the credo. And I already said that our credo of the library is facilitating open knowledge creation, which is, of course, helping the general credo of dare to think of our university. And open, we take this literally. We try to open as much as possible all our collections online, or at least findable through the catalog that we have it on paper. And of course, the library is managing the open repository, and we have a data steward team that supports our researchers in good research data management. And we couldn't do that if we weren't in the place that we are, namely we are, as the university library, we are part of the Department of Research Affairs. So in the universities, you have the faculties, 11 faculties, and you have central administration. We are part of central administration and part of the research department. We are not part of the education department. And we think we are good there because even students, when they do work in the library or when we support them, it's for doing research as part of their educational program. So it's a good place to be in, and we have seen it throughout the years with the developments in open science, that we can use the experience that we have in metadata. That catalog is metadata, and in data management, we need information literacy, we need metadata experts. We already have the basis in our library, and we built upon that in our library. Now, since for years already, we have developed an open science strategy at Ghent University. We have an open access policy since 2010, and it's under revision now, and we will have a new policy by autumn. We have a research data management policy since 2016, a data stewards team to support that RDM policy since 2019. We signed DORA in 2020. DORA is a statement on research assessment and how you handle research assessment, and that you drive away from impact factors because there are much more qualitative evaluation criteria out there than just impact factors of journals. And for years now, we have been involved in open science projects with the library. Open Air has already been mentioned. This is no longer only a project. This is now a membership organization. In our mandate that we have since 2010, we have an immediate deposit optional open access mandate. This will become stricter. We ask for the final peer-reviewed manuscript to be deposited in our repository so that we can open it up to the world as much as possible. For research data management, it's a framework with responsibilities for the researcher, for faculty, central administration, and where we explain the legal framework, taking into consideration copyright, GDPR rules, so privacy rules, and these kind of things. And there are guidelines for researchers to write a data management plan. It's even so that by now a data management plan for many projects is obliged. We also have internal project funding, which is the special research fund, BOF, where a data management plan is obliged. So we provide secure storage for data in our data center, et cetera, et cetera. Also, the Ghent University evaluation system has changed. It's more a merit and evidence-based approach. I'm not an expert on that, but what I want to say here is that this whole process is for professors. This is an evaluation process for professors. Is supported by a portfolio. So you indicate in a portfolio where the accents, where your focus will be for research, education, and societal impact. And on leadership, there's a portfolio that you can use to indicate what your focus is. And in that portfolio, we have different dimensions. And for example, in interdisciplinarity, scientific impact, and societal and economic impact, you can use open science. You can integrate open science into your focus in your research dimensions. So what we don't have is real indicators for open science, because our whole new evaluation system is about going away from these kind of indicators and more focus on what can you do as an individual on research, education, and societal impacts on these three levels, and that you indicate what you your focus will be, and then evaluation throughout the years. Have you achieved what you wanted to do or not? Now, Ghent University is also quite active in the open science ecosystem in Europe, in different networks. For example, CESAR is a network of science and technology universities within the European University Association, the association, the Guild, where we are a member of, and then in the European University Network and Light. We have lots of contacts with organizations like Science Europe, and also in regional groups like the Flemish Inter-University Council, where we work together with the Flemish universities. Now, a last topic that I want to address is policy in Belgium. Now, there I have to indicate a bit of this federal structure of Belgium, which is quite complicated. So there is the country Belgium, but in the country Belgium, you have the regions, Flanders region, Brussels capital region, and the Walloon region. Then you have communities, which is based on language. There's the Flemish community, the French community, and the German-speaking community. And then you still have federal authorities, the king, the federal government, federal parliament. So this is quite a complex environment to work in, each with different capacities. And the capacity for research and education is based within the regions and the communities. For Flanders, the Flemish community and the Flanders region is one entity. But in the Walloon part of the country, there is the Walloon region and the French community, and then you have the German community, speaking community, so it's more complex. But in Flanders, we develop our policy on research within the Flemish community. Now, on a federal level, so for Belgium as a whole, copyright is a federal capacity. So this is on a federal level. We have an open access provision in the Belgian law that allows us, allows the author himself to open up the final peer-reviewed version of a scholarly article, it's only for articles, to open it up after a certain embargo period in our repositories. So we have that in the Belgian law since 2018. So that's a good thing. That's on federal level because copyright is a federal capacity. On the Flemish level, research policy is in place, and the Flemish funder FWO is an important funder for Flemish projects. And there you have mandates for open access publication and data management measures. So for there, a DMP is obliged in 2 versions after 6 months, the first version of your DMP, and at the end you have to deliver a complete DMP, and there's a default template. So this is followed up. And then since 2020, we have the Flemish Open Science Board established. So this is actually a whole roadmap towards open science in Flanders, accompanied with a check with a budget of 5 million euros a year for all the Flemish research organizations in Flanders, and accompanied by, as I said, a roadmap and KPIs towards 2024, KPIs on ORCID. So the researchers should have an ORCID on open access to publications, on fair and open data, and on DMPs. So we are now in our 2nd year of working with these KPIs and working on this roadmap. It has been quite a challenge to start the Flemish Open Science Board, but now it's gaining speed. And then as a last thing to mention, in Belgium, we have an Open Access Belgium informal network of people working around open access, but open science in general, in libraries, in research offices. So while the Flemish Open Science Board is a Flemish, so only Flemish part of the country, Open Access Belgium is a federal is in the Flemish community, in the French-speaking community. Everyone is there, and there we can exchange a lot of information on a Belgian level. And here in Europe, oh, I have to stop. The European Commission is, of course, very supportive of open science, and there's a lot of investment in projects. We have the European Open Science Cloud forming, where we can make infrastructures, research infrastructures interoperable. We engage in standards, so a lot of things are being made there. There's Open Research Europe, which I already mentioned. In Europe, we also have the European University Association doing a lot of work on open science to advise members, etc. And with Open Air, which started up as a project, we support open access with a human network of people and with an infrastructure. I think it's important to, and Open Air is one of the pillars of the European Open Science Cloud. With Open Air, we collaborate on a global level with, for example, the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, and with SCOS, and for example, with OECD and with REDALIC, so all over the world. And what is important to see here, what do I mention Open Air, if we have all these kinds of research infrastructures and infrastructures working together, being interoperable, being open, you can create an environment where all this information is connected and transparent, and that you can find a lot of information together and work with different sources together in one system. That is what open research in a nutshell, the Open Air research graph in a nutshell is doing, but it would take me as a separate talk to talk about this. And to end my talk, I want to give the example of the COVID-19 Gateway to show what we can achieve when we have open science. It allows you to tackle worldwide problems, such as the pandemic, where information is exchanged. We do know that it can create some problems as well. We have seen misinterpretation of preprints and stuff like that. But in the end, exchange of information and knowledge building has gone much faster through transparent open science practices. And so to end with, I'll end with the same cartoon I showed in the beginning. What we want to do with all these processes is to go into transparent, available, free, reusable, accessible research around the globe. So, and I hope that in all over the world, we can achieve that. Thank you. I'm sorry if I went a bit over time.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Inge, for such an informative presentation. Maybe we can ask the audience, maybe they will, maybe they have some question. I know that I have one, at least, maybe I will start. I was wondering, we had yesterday the opening presentation or event, sorry, the opening event of the entire week. And Olga interviewed during this event, a professor in Bar-Ilan University, and one of the questions was, what are her motive for doing open access? And she said that her initial motive was the European Union. And I was wondering if you know what are the motives of maybe faculty members in Ghent universities or maybe in other university to do open research. It's because they are forced to do so or because they understand the importance and so on?
Well, actually, I can refer to the survey EUA has performed the last few years on open science in general and open access to publications, and where we see several of these reasons being listed or in other surveys. And unfortunately, in many cases, it's because people are forced to do so because of funding. But many, more and more researchers really want to do open access and open science, but they see a lot of obstacles, of course, and it's becoming rather expensive with all these APCs. So more and more researchers are really just behind the idea of opening up researches and exchanging knowledge without any problem, because they like it when they want to read the publication that you can just click it and there are no obstacles whatsoever, or that they are cited more easily and collaborate more easily because people find their research. So they are all in favor, but they are overwhelmed by the obstacles on copyright level, the commercial publishers, the APCs costing that much, the impacts on their evaluation, on their chances to, for example, to go to a university in the United States if they have different evaluations criteria than here. So there's a lot of concern about that. But this being said, certainly in the younger generation, we see a lot of people who really want to do open access to publications.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, I have a question, if I may ask.
Yes.
It's following her, Sarit's question. She was talking about the benefit of researching in doing practicing open science. Ghent University is doing it for many years. What are the benefits for the university in practicing open science? For example, if we want to convince here people or institutions to participate in open science, what is the benefit for an institution?
I'll start with open access to publication and make a comparison with about 20 years ago. A lot of publications of our researchers were not available within our own university. We didn't have a subscription. They didn't give us the article or whatever. We didn't have it. So the first thing of all is that we have an archive now over the last 20 years of the publications published by our researchers. It's available at least internally to our researchers and our students. But what we also see is with our academic bibliography, if researchers outside or people outside of the university look for information on our researchers, typically they end up in our repository. We are really high in research results in Google. So in the first 5 results. So when you look for people or for articles, you can find them right there in results list of Google. So that's important. Another thing is that we have seen throughout the years, because of our engagement in open science, that we have gained more interest for collaboration outside, collaboration in Europe, but also that we are being listened to by European Commission, for example, or by policy leaders, etc., etc. And thirdly, we are from a small region. As I explained, research is a capacity of Flanders. Flanders is 6 million people. So that's a small region. If we want to make sure that we are out there, it's of course also about publishing in the high-end journal, but it's also about opening your research and being findable as easy as possible. So we really see that we have gained traction because of that. Maybe I can also say that we have gained influence through the associations as well, like CESAR or the European University Association. When you have a strategy around that, you can voice that strategy and you can talk with people and interact with people and weigh on decision making. So these are a few of the things at university level that I would say that have effect. We also see it on research assessment, which is only just a little bit on open science things, but that we, because of our new evaluation system, that also we have gained interest in different communities to work together on research assessment, and as said, a bit also about open science and research assessment. So all these kind of things helped in positioning the university, apart from, of course, the big disciplines that are very important in our university and have their communication methods, of course. But it certainly helped.
I have a question, if it's okay. I wanted to ask about the researchers' concern regarding prestige, because when they choose a journal to publish their paper, they are very concerned about its position in the world of publishing. Mm-hmm. And there is a belief, a common belief here in Israel, at least this is why my thoughts about it anyway, that if you choose an open access journal, so it will be in the cost of, choosing a lesser journal than, it's like less prestigious than a journal, like a traditional journal, not open access. So,
I think one way to tackle it in the classical way, if you look at the Web of Science, there are already a few thousand open access journals in the Web of Science. So that's already first thing I want to say. I'm not in favor of Web of Science as an evaluation criterion, but quality is being assessed there with which I mean that journals that get into an index of the Web of Science have proven to be to peer review, to have a certain quality. So there you can already see that quite some open access journals end up in the Web of Science. That's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing is that we also see in publications like Nature that you have different quality in Nature as well. And if you look at citations and stuff like that, they are the impact factor of Nature is partially supported by a few articles that are really, really highly cited. But there are many articles also in Nature that are hardly cited at all. So you see that there is this quality realm out there. It's a diversity, and it's also the diversity in a digital world. It's not as easy anymore as 30 years ago. Like we have these 20 journals that are fantastic in my field, and then you have 20 that are less interesting, and that's it. Now it's a whole spectrum out there. And this is the complexity of a digital world. It isn't anymore like that you can say this or that is the best way. And there are so many researchers out there and so much research being published. It's impossible to do that in like 500 top journals or something. Everything else is not quality. We see that more and more funders step away in their evaluation and institutions from only these top journals, and that you look at the intrinsic quality, like give me your 5 top publications and explain why these are your top publications. Is it already everywhere like that? Certainly not. So, and we are really in a situation now where it's a bit difficult to assess how to work with that. And I do know for researchers, it's not easy.
Another question, if I may, it's regarding the new metrics, this altmetrics. I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And you didn't really talk about it today. I wanted to ask about the role of altmetrics in this open access revolution and how it can assist us persuade the researchers and maybe even the university leaders, to join the open access change here.
Well, there's a difference. Altmetrics is more towards society, because altmetrics will measure how many times your publication is cited in a tweet, in other social media, or in reports out there, which are more like...
Even in the news.
Or even in news, yeah, indeed. So it's much broader than citation by your research community, but it has its value because it shows the penetration of your research into societal impact or not. So that is what you gain with altmetrics. It's a broader view on what the impact of your research is, while previously, certainly with impact factors, you only look at publications, penetration and citations by your peers, which is important as well. Peer review is still important. I don't discuss that.
But it's very limited, as you know, it's very limited. Yeah. Especially when you're talking about databases like Web of Science, where they're only relate to citations within their database. So
indeed.
Scopus as well, any database, it's the same.
Indeed. So. Completely right. So it's always a bubble that you look into, and altmetric adds to this bubble. It doesn't replace it. It adds to this bubble because you have a more general view also outside of academia, also outside, because you also see tweets within the community, of course, but also outside the community and into society.
Okay, I also have a question, Inge. First of all, thank you so much for your fascinating presentation and lecture. And I liked very much your thought about the student sitting and working in the library, and that you think that he's doing the research work and not only participates in a learning process. Mm-hmm. Not each university has its library inside the research authority organizational structure. Okay, and thus I want to ask you, how do you see the library, the academic library role in promoting and strengthening the open access activities inside the university? How can you see the connection between the library's activities and researchers' activities? Because sometimes there are two different and not connected processes that researchers are struggling for finding the budgets for their open access publishings. Libraries are struggling for decreasing the prices of subscriptions and searching for open access models within the publishers and providers. And the university management, they are not aware of this connection maybe between two processes, and how to combine, how to maybe make the policy, or you name it. You know that we unfortunately do not have still in Israel a national open access policy. And if I'm not mistaken, there is no policy, open access policy in no university in Israel. So I just want to ask you, how do you see it? And of course, the library's role, you know.
I think the library role is important here because libraries for centuries have managed information and knowledge. And whether this is in a closed subscription world or in an open science world, you need managing these resources. You need people guiding that. And typically a library has the ability to do that. Do libraries have to evolve and attract new profiles? That's for sure. If I look at our personnel in our library now and like 10 years ago, it has changed a lot. There are more profiles working with open science now. The research data stewards are part of the library in Ghent University. So we have this connection. And another thing that I want to address is, for years, our libraries have have managed like catalogs or databases now, and worked openly with other teams around the world. We gathered like through LIBER, for example, which is the Association of Research Libraries. We exchange practices and how to do things. I know about the ELAG, the automation group of European libraries, where they exchange how to make good repositories, how to tackle these kind of questions. And you could argue, okay, you can do that in another team as well. But if you see in a research department, typically they didn't work with these kind of infrastructures and they don't know much about it. That is not bad, because that wasn't their function. The function of the library has been for centuries to support researchers in information gathering, in collection management. And this is another way of collection management and how to support your researchers. So, and certainly if you look at materials of LIBER, for example, they have quite some materials that libraries can use in connection with their management to express the value of libraries in that process, that you don't have to invent it all by yourself. So I would really look at this LIBER information. A second thing, for years and years, decades, we have managed the library budget. So until now, it was mainly about subscriptions. Some libraries engaged in APCs to do this centrally for the university. We explicitly don't do that at Ghent University, because APCs in many cases are eligible costs in projects, and we don't have anything to do with the projects. So that is something that we don't do. What we try to do is get a bit of a grip on how much is spent on APCs, but it's very difficult to really get a hold of that. And lastly, it's within researchers, but also especially in libraries, that this open access to publications and later open science has flourished, because there is this culture of knowledge sharing and of doing things together. And we have seen that this has worked over time. So there are just three of the reasons why libraries are an important factor. Don't invent a new department to do that. And even the IT department is, the connection with IT department is important. We work together with the IT department. But when it comes to how do you manage collections and information, then this was the library is a logical place to place this activity.
Thank you very much.
And I have there is a short question or not. You talked about data stewards. Does the university need also an infrastructure to do research data management?
But there are two different things. We have infrastructure for data management planning. And then we have infrastructure for internal use of storage and stuff like that. We don't have a separate data repository at the moment, because most disciplines have a repository that they use, and there are quite some solutions out there. We are working towards a data vault for more for very closed preservation of data, but we can't do it all in Ghent University. So within the Flemish Open Science Board, we look for collaborations with other actors within Flanders to do things together on an infrastructural level. And some things we do within our university, and some things are just done within a discipline. Like you don't have to replicate GenBank, for example, it's out there. But for some disciplines, we are still looking at ways to improve our services, but mostly we try to do that with other organizations to do that together.
Thank you.
There is one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much. This was wonderful. I was wondering if you can explain more about the diamond model. Can you expand on initiatives or examples you have for this?
Yeah, so Diamond is open access publishing. It can be in a typical open access journal, but it can be a platform, which doesn't have the structure of a journal. It's a platform where you disseminate information. And Diamond open access is free for the reader and free for the author. So you don't pay APCs. It's typically supported by a research community, by institution, by some academics, and controlled, academia controlled. It's non-profit because it's not about gain. It's not about getting money out of this model. It's really about the services that you want to give to your community. That's one thing. That's the theory around it. Some examples. I showed 2 examples, but other examples are, for example, Lingoa. That's in the discipline of linguistics, where a complete editorial board of a linguistic journal from Elsevier started a new Diamond open access journal. So that is supported by the journal is supported by, that it's called Glossa, is supported by different means of revenue by the community itself. And the whole editorial process is managed by the community itself, which is most of the time done in normal journals as well. So they manage it. So it's completely community controlled, and it's paid for by libraries. For Library of Humanities works in the same way. Libraries pay, the community is a member, or these kind of things. So that's basically what a Diamond open access model is. Lingoa is an example of. Is one example. Math OA is another one, but there are many like that. And we see a lot of them actually in Latin America, for example. There are a lot of Diamond open access journals in Latin America. Okay.
Thank you so much. I think we do not have more questions. Yes, not?
No.
So Inge,
one last thing.
Okay.
One last thing I'm curious about. What quiz system do you have in your university?
Well, we have our own quiz system because we want to have control over it. Many years ago, I think in 2015, something like that, we were on the brink of deciding on buying a quiz system, and we were thinking about Pure, but we decided not to do it. At that time, it was then acquired by Elsevier as well. But one of the big things was that we wanted to have control over how it works, the connections with the different systems that we have in our university. And we have seen throughout the years that the decision was not a bad decision. It is an expensive decision, however, but yeah, Pure is expensive as well. So there's quite some people working on it. So we have our own quiz system.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Inge.
Yes, thank you very much. And we will keep in touch, and we'll be happy to invite you to our further events. And I also want to thank all of participants and to invite all of you to our tomorrow session with Dr. Judith Lieberman-Szkolnicki about all that you want to ask about open access, something like this, okay, but didn't ask. Also for our further lectures and events on Wednesday and Thursday. And of course, to participate in our escape room activity, and for bar-Ilan participants also to take part in our photos competition, to make your picture with the frame, open access frame that we have in several libraries, and also in several places at the Shema, and I don't remember, but you can see all the information at our site, and of course we will be happy to see all of you at all our open access further events. Thank you once again, and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Inga. Bye. בשנייה.
צריך לעצור את ההקלטה, שרי?
כן, נכון. Stop recording.